Hello friends, we are going to discuss with you dominance of fiscal policy over monetary policy retards economic growth. Our objective is speedier, higher economic growth to make India a global economic power of 21st century, as has been envisioned by Rajiv Gandhi, ex-PM of India. He has envisioned to make India a global economic power of 21st century by involving a skilled youth power by riding higher and better global technology for generation of or production of quality goods of global standard and at a cheaper rate, affordable for everyone. This was the vision of Rajiv Gandhi. Generally, it is fiscal policy makers who takes a lead role in economic growth, where monetary policy makers or RBI supports it. In these days, we are seeing fiscal policy makers or government of India is hiding itself behind monetary policy makers or RBI. Here, government of India is hiding behind RBI because of to rule the roost to remain behind RBI coffers. RBI coffers may be used for economic growth or short-term economic growth of fiscal policy makers or government of India. Here, government of India remaining behind RBI is trying to finance their short-term economic growth for short-term economic or political gain to present before the people of India that its achievement is higher one, but to remain behind RBI, it simply wants to use RBI coffers. And in the midst of lowest revenue and higher expenditure, because in short-term economic growth, which is always becomes the policy of government, is funded by excessive resources, which is lacking in the midst of lowest public revenue and highest public expenditure to meet the shortest possible economic growth to remain behind RBI coffer. But in these days, we are seeing fiscal policy makers' dominance over monetary policy makers or RBI thinks to get political gain or higher political gain to remain behind RBI, and it needs higher expenditure. And to meet this expenditure, there is a need of higher fund, and government remaining behind RBI want to use RBI's coffer to meet this expenditure. Here, government is being funded by RBI against supplying of government papers, and against this government papers, RBI is trying to lower the interest rate in favor of government of India, which becomes unfavorable for others. agents of economic growth. In this situation, Government of India and fiscal policy makers are trying to use RBI's coffers, and here against supplying government papers. By supplying government papers, RBI interest rate becomes lower and in favor of Government of India, which is unfavorable for others. And this process creates another problem of RBI's interest rate setting process, which is going to be distorted by RBI to favor Government of India by destabilizing financial sector and economy and market economy. Financial sector strength and market economy are the best factors who open new vistas for our highly skilled youth power, as has been envisioned by Rajiv Gandhi. But they have become the worst victim in these situations because these market situation, neither economy are favoring to generate higher and higher employment for youth. So they are the worst sufferers. On the other hand, the private sector becomes the worst victim also because these interest rates are not favorable for private sector, and the private sector becomes the interest less sector where investment appetite becomes lower, production capacity becomes lower, and employment becomes the lowest one. And private sector is also the worst sufferer. Here, in the name of privatization, these private sectors resources are being eaten away by government on the one hand, and on the other hand, public sector is being financially put into distress where capitalization or recapitalization of private sector banks becomes difficult. In this situation, government is not doing well to support government. RBI as a monetary policy makers, its objective is for higher and sustainable long-term growth, which is being sidelined by fiscal policy makers just to achieve the shortest possible economic growth within shortest possible time for political gain. So long-term objective of RBI is sidelined by fiscal policy makers. And in this process, the long-term groundwork of development of infrastructural facilities to strengthen financial sector, to strengthen economy are weakened, and the economy become the worst sufferer of this situation. To sort out this situation, the government as a fiscal policy makers are disturbing RBI's long-term objective, which is not good in the interest of long-term sustainable growth of India, as has been visioned by ex-PM Rajiv Gandhi. by involving youth power into economic development. On the other hand, such type of situation puts pressure on quality of asset and creates bad balance sheet, as well as this situation leaves minimum resources for the private sectors for generation or creation of better economic growth. So, youth power as well as financial sector, especially public sector financial institutions are the worst victim of this policy or physical policy making process where government of India wants to achieve economic growth within shortest period of time to show that the government have done a lot in economic front, but actually these situations are disturbing and distressing in the development of economic growth. Such type of monetary policy makers or RBI's unfavorable treatment for government of India is not good for long-term economic growth, which is the prime objective of RBI. The other objective of RBI, such as price control as well as lowering inflation and providing better credit and monetary facilities at lowest interest rate, is not going to respond by economy in a better way. Economy is not responding in a better way because of they are thinking it goes in favor of government of India, not in favor of private investors, not in favor of youth force, which are facing higher level of unemployment, which can be solved only by generating and creating production at a global standard level for higher and higher economic growth. This is a situation. In this situation, RBI's compromise with government of India's fiscal policy is injurious for economic growth of India. And this situation is not favorable either for market economy, for financial institutions, for economy, and for long-term sustainable economic growth objective of RBI. So RBI as a monetary policy makers should try to amend these things in the interest of nation, and government should cooperate and government should come forward or to take lead in economic growth, not hide itself behind RBI. Because RBI always supports, it can't lead, but here situation is peculiar and different because government all activities are blamed because it is out of God or act of gods. Here act of gods stands nowhere. It is a duty of government of India to take a lead of front role in the development of economy for higher and speedier economic growth. This is my contention before you people. This is my suggestion before our financial institution, our youth, unemployed youth, our political parties, and government to think it in a proper way to solve it in the interest of economic growth of India to make India a global power of 21st century as has been envisioned by Rajiv Gandhi, ex-Prime Minister of India. A lot of thanks to my viewers.